I'm Dr. Duke with The New American, and I'm really glad to be joined today by Alex Newman. Besides being a good friend of mine, Alex is an international reporter. He writes for The New American magazine. He also writes and reports for us over at Freedom Project Academy, Freedom Project Media. And Alex, you are also a major figure in the anti-Common Core, anti-public school, get kids into homeschooling camp. And you and I are both high-level members of PSE, which stands for Public School Exit. It's a new site, a new venture with lots of really important people across the country trying to convince moms and dads that there is no way to reform American public schools, there's no way to fix them, that the best option is to leave them. So say a few words, if you don't mind, at the outset about what Public School Exit is.
Thank you so much, Duke. Yeah, it's an honor to be with you as always. And Public School Exit, you and I are both founding directors of this organization. We've joined forces with some other amazing Americans who've been in this fight or similar fights for a long time. And the goal is really to knock down all the barriers for parents who want to remove their children from public schools. And so that starts with, of course, giving them the facts, right? You need to know what your children are being exposed to in public school before you can go ahead and make the right decision. And so for that purpose, of course, we have this special report that we did here, you and I and some others in the New American magazine called Rescuing Our Children. This is one of our chief weapons in this battle to educate the American people. And then after that, now we're putting together lists of resources. We're in the process of starting up a scholarship fund. We've just released a press release, and we'll be doing some very significant national media interviews on this. And we already have the left ready to attack us. We got an email from Political Research Associates. I mean, it's kind of like the Soviet Poverty Law Center, but a little smaller and a little more hateful. But hopefully this will be the start of some attacks by the liberals, and we can get our message out to the rest of the public, whatever segment of the population still relies on the establishment media for their information. And we can work on, as the name implies, getting the children to exit public schools and getting them into the safe sanctuary of homeschools, Christian schools, private schools, online schools, places like Freedom Project Academy, anything that is uncontaminated by government dollars, government ideology, and government mandates.
We, with Public School Exit, we're really just getting started. We're putting our ducks in a row. We're working on websites and all sorts of strategies. We haven't really made an official, formal mark yet in the culture, right? We're beginning to push toward that. But it's interesting that already we are notified. We've gained some notoriety among the progressives. You mentioned a reporter by the name of Chrissy Stroop working for an organization that you correctly identify as even more left-wing and narrow-minded than the Southern Poverty Law Center. What's the name of the group again?
It's called Political Research Associates.
Right. And so I've seen some of the questions. She was very nice. We got to give her credit. When she approached you about this, she made sure that she identified that she completely disagrees with us. And for all intents and purposes, she let us know she's really coming after us. But she did give you a chance to respond to some questions. And I think the kind of questions they're already asking us shows how much they fear what we're proposing here. And one of the questions, Alex, was, do those people who want to see an exodus away from the public school, are they really celebrating the coronavirus? Are people on your side who want to see kids out of public schools, are we all gleeful, Alex, that the public schools are shut down now? Please explain how you answered that for reporter Stroop.
Yeah, and it looks like that's going to be the main line of attack, Duke. I think it's fascinating that they're not attacking us on the facts, right? The fact that children in government schools today are dumber than they've ever been in American history. The fact that most of them can't even read properly or do math properly. They're not attacking us on the substance. Instead, the question was phrased with weasel words. Some critics might say, which of course she means, us. This is our attack line. Some critics might say that you sound like you're celebrating coronavirus because do you really hate public schools so much that you're happy about a deadly virus that's going to kill people and destroy the economy and so on? And of course, we're not happy about people dying. We're not happy about people losing their jobs. In fact, this affects us. We have family, we have jobs, we have people, neighbors, friends. So of course, we're not happy about that. But what we are happy about, I think this is a widely expressed sentiment among advocates of homeschooling and getting the children out of public schools, and this movement now has become very, very mainstream. This is a historic opportunity. And, just because there is a tragedy and an opportunity in the midst of that tragedy doesn't mean that anybody is celebrating the tragedy, but we would be foolish, we would be naive, we would be idiotic, we would be derelict in our duty not to take advantage of this opportunity and say, look, the population of homeschoolers just went from, maybe 5% of the country to 100% of the country. Now let's work on keeping as many of those children out of the government's indoctrination system as we can. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of attacks they come up with. But the questions were, I think, very, very revealing about the line of attack. And so we'll have to see what comes out of this.
What gets me is that members of the mainstream media, the traditional media, and the left-wing media, as this reporter, by her own definition, is, right? That when you watch them play the gotcha game with Donald Trump over coronavirus, right? It seems to me that the mainstream media is just loving coronavirus because they get to blame it on Trump. Sir, you weren't ready. 10,000 people died because of you got blood on your hands. For people who engage in that kind of reporting to actually come to us with the question, are you really secretly triumphing in the coronavirus, is the height of hypocrisy over and above the foolishness of the impetus of the question. And you're exactly right. You and I both know, and many across the country know, that our kids are performing worse than ever, that most of our kids, over 66% of our kids, according to NAEP scores, are not grade level attainments. They don't read and write as 8th graders. They're 1-2 years behind. Every year, the public school seems to fall farther behind in terms of literacy, math, science, and reading. In fact, the only thing that public schools do seem really committed to is appropriating from parents their role. Right now, during this coronavirus, we've got schools opening for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's, hey, don't go out. It's dangerous. Unless you're going to your public school for a box lunch, right, for a bag lunch. The irony of all of this gets me. And so I guess my question to you is, with absolutely unquestionable evidence that the schools are doing a poor job of educating our kids, why do people like Chrissy Stroop, why do progressives still act as if they and they alone have the key for academic success for our kids?
Well, I think the battle lines are now being much more firmly drawn, Duke. And I think this is progress because the left is now basically coming out of the closet and admitting, hey, our totalitarian designs for America depend on brainwashing the overwhelming majority of the children in the public schools. We know they're not learning anything useful. We know they can't read and write properly. We know they can't do math properly. But hey, they know gender ideology. 27% of the kids in California are now gender nonconforming. The number of transgender children going through medical transitions in the state of Utah went up by 10,000% in the last 5 years. They realize that is where they're going to win or lose this battle. And now, to our credit, I think our side is finally starting to understand this as well, Duke. I'll tell you, I've been just tremendously encouraged by some of the developments that we've seen in the last year. Just recently, we had Donald Trump, the President of the United States, say in his State of the Union speech that it's terrible that so many children are trapped, was the word he used, in failing government schools, and we need a way to get them out. We had Rush Limbaugh, probably the most influential conservative media character in America, right? The largest talk show host in America. It's only like 18 million people listen to his show. Say, hey, you got to take your children out of the public schools. You should start homeschooling. Are you wondering why they're so dumb? Are you wondering why they're so brainwashed? Get them out of the public schools. You had Franklin Graham, one of the most influential evangelical leaders in this country, in response to the LGBT indoctrination mandates in New Jersey, say, parents, you have to take your children out of the public schools. So this went from being something that was out on the fringes for decades to now being front and center in the national conversation. And I think that is tremendously important. So I think what we're seeing now, Duke, with the attacks that are starting to come from the political research associates, from these other left-wing hate groups, and these will eventually make their way out into the left-wing hate media, is a recognition that, oh my goodness, the other side is waking up. Quick, find something to demonize them with, find something to make them look ridiculous with, and you'll see they're going to start throwing out names, a Christian fundamentalist, so white supremacist, all kinds of, the names, of course, they just make them up out of thin air because they know that people don't like those names. But what we're going to see, I think, in the coming months here is really the battle lines firmly defined and the left going all out to attack people who criticize public schools, even though they acknowledge that the public schools are harming children in so many ways.
That red line, that line of demarcation you point out, we only got about a minute left, and I'll give you the last word. But we need to recognize, moms and dad, what that line is. On the one side of the line are homeschool kids, who by every metric outperform public school kids in academic educational assignments, right? What school used to be about. On the other side of that line are modern public schools, which have given up their responsibility to make our kids really literate and college and career ready, and they've swapped that out for progressive social justice ideology. Those are your options. Real school on one side that's proven to work with homeschoolers, and radical social reindoctrination for your kids in public schools. Last comment.
That's what's coming, Duke. Harvard Law is now preparing an attack on homeschoolers. The Washington Compost just attacked homeschoolers. This is going to continue to grow. We've got to stand firm. And thank you so much for having me, Duke. It's always a pleasure.
We're going to keep you on for another segment about how we can help moms and dads who want to homeschool.